Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and haunts.
Today's story takes us to a haunted brewery. I'm Sarah.
And I'm David.
Let's get into it. So VK Brewing. This one has been one of the hauntings that's right under our noses this whole time. It is located in Exton, Pennsylvania, and a listener actually told us about this. Username MamaJ70 on TikTok. So thank you. If you're ever listening to the pod and you think, wow, I would really like them to go here, or I wonder if they have an episode on this, you can find us on social media at Paranormal in Pennsylvania, or you can email us at paranormalinpennsylvania@gmail.com. Comment on YouTube, wherever. We'll find it, and we try to prioritize locations that listeners send in. We were able to go here for lunch with family.
Yes.
And what was really cool is we went and got there during the lunch rush, but then we stayed there for a while, so we were able to actually spend some quiet time here.
Yeah, when the lunch hours died down, when you say like quiet time, I don't know, to me that comes off as like, you know, we just sat in a corner and just all said nothing.
And no one spoke.
Yeah.
No, that's not the case. So, some history. VK Brewing is currently a veteran-owned brewery and restaurant, and it's located in the historic Ship Inn building. The history of this building goes back very far, like most things in eastern Pennsylvania that are close-ish proximity to Philly do. In 1794, the Lancaster Turnpike, also known as Route 30, was built. And this was one of the first major highways that was used in Pennsylvania, specifically for travel between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. So clearly anything along this route would be considered prime real estate.
Right, because you need a lot of places to stay, because, you know, it's not like now where you could just drive across in one day, or even in a couple days. This would take, actually, I don't know how long it would actually take. So, but I know it's significantly longer than 5 hours.
Yes, it would take more than 5 hours for sure. And so what would happen is along this route, these public houses would pop up, and they were specially licensed to sell liquor, but many of them also had an inn component to them, so you could stay overnight if you needed to.
Makes sense.
And if you're coming from Philly, it's my understanding you wouldn't normally need to stay overnight here, but if you're coming from Pittsburgh and it's like the last leg of your journey, this might be one of your last stops before you hit Philadelphia. The road was regularly traveled by stagecoaches. So, again, think very old-timey.
With clip-clops.
Yes.
Better known as horses.
Yes, with horses. And also wagons and, in general, drivers. So there's a wide variety based on, honestly, just how wealthy you are. Depends what you're taking. To meet the needs of those travelers, this place opened. And it's one of the earliest public houses in the area because it was built in 1794, which is the same year as the Lancaster Turnpike.
Coincidental? Or just like really good timing?
I think it was Lancaster Turnpike happened, and then they were like, oh my gosh, there's so much potential here.
Fair.
And John Bowen is the person who had applied for the license, and he didn't officially apply until 1796, so technically for 2 years of operation, they were unlicensed, but I think maybe people cared a bit less back then.
Well, unlicensed for liquor? Do we know that they were explicitly serving liquor during those 2 years?
That's true. We don't. We just know that in 1796, he applied to the Chester County Courts for a license to keep a public house of entertainment. So who knows what it was before. So as mentioned, this was used for Philadelphia to Pittsburgh travel primarily. And because the Ship Inn was such a prominent stoppage point, they would post signs of how much it was to stay there, and it was 31 1/4 cents per meal at the inn.
Sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah. And I remember when we were talking about this while we were out at lunch, my dad said, how do you have 1/4 cent? And I still don't know.
Weren't there coins that they'd break into pieces, like for instance when you hear like pieces of 8?
Oh, maybe.
So like, I don't know how common of a practice it was and I don't know when it was even done, but I know like coins used to be broken into pieces.
Then that makes sense.
I don't know if that was ever practiced here either.
Where do you think it was practiced?
In the world.
Okay.
On planet Earth.
All right.
Maybe in Europe. The Europeans, they're so fancy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it could also be if you have 4 people, that will round up to a cent. You know, I'm sure they figured it out somehow. Something really cool is that within the building, so within VK Brewing now, they have the original mile marker from the ship in. And it says 25M to P, which means 25 miles to Philadelphia. I think that's so cool that they still have it today.
That is actually really cool that it survived that long.
Yeah, 1794. And for it to not have been eroded by weather or anything, that's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, it makes me think, though, did they do any like restorative work on it? Which would be totally fair, considering the age of it.
Yeah, I think it's completely possible. Given the prominence of this location being so close to Philadelphia, there are some famous names that dined here when it was the ship in.
Me. Paranormal in Pennsylvania.
Not when it was the ship in.
Oh, okay. Well,
but yes, very famous Paranormal in Pennsylvania dined there when it was VK Brewing. When it was the ship in, there was George Washington and also Andrew Jackson that dined there. As well as later in its life, Jackie Kennedy.
Okay. That was a very left field person. I was ready for like another like, you know, one of the original presidents or somebody around, like in that ballpark, not Jackie Kennedy. Not that there's anything wrong with Jackie Kennedy, just totally not on my radar.
I just think it speaks to how prominent this has been throughout history, because we have George Washington and then we have the First Lady of the United States from the 50s and 60s. No, 60s, 63. Yeah.
Very precise. Very good.
Yeah. So it has had tons of historical figures, tons of history in general. It's really cool to me that it's still open as a restaurant. And it was a good restaurant at that. We enjoyed everything that we had there, from apps to food. I just got an iced tea. I didn't get a mocktail. But you had the beer there.
Yeah. I had a flight of beer, which was all like pretty good.
Yeah.
Can't complain.
Yeah, our family members got cocktails. They liked those. So recommend it from a historical perspective and from a dining perspective. But with this history, it's no surprise that it's haunted, of course, like so many old buildings are. So starting with the hauntings actually date back to the public house days. The main ghost that is known is from the 1700s. And of course, that makes sense. Let's go back to the start. The ghost is said to visit the brewery on occasion and actually will sit as a patron at the bar. The strange thing is the ghost is dressed all in 1700s garb.
I don't know. Because of like the area, you know, just like a reenactor, does not out of the question for me.
Well, I think that's why it's able to slide under the radar a bit, because it could just be, oh, is this a reenactor from the Brandywine battlefield or something like that that's right here. So it wouldn't initially raise suspicions throughout if this was somewhere, you know, that didn't have that type of history, but enough that people are noticing it. Because if you see someone in 1700s garb, you're going to say something. Like, we would have noted that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't staring down the bar too much, admittedly. But I think that on a quick scan of the bar, that would have been quite obvious.
Yeah, I don't know that we would go up and try to speak to them, but it would stand out, I think. But what's interesting is the haunting almost seems unintelligent to me, where this patron thinks that they're still at the Ship Inn or the Old Tavern.
Or it could just be residual energy, right? If it is.
It could be residual energy. What do you think? I think it has to be a distinct spirit, given that it's the same presentation every time.
I don't know, man. So what I struggle with, and not really struggle, it's just very unique to me that in this area there are so many traveling spirits, or
that's true,
spirits that are in the building that reenact like entering and leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like through Westchester, we had quite a few of those.
Yeah.
And, this is not super far from Westchester.
Yeah.
So it's like 10 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm. By car, not by stagecoach.
Yeah. Well, what about by wagon?
I don't know. What about by just horse? Walking? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I ain't walking that far.
Yeah, I'm certainly not. But it's a good point. It could be someone passing through. Maybe that's why they only show up sometimes in terms of someone that was taking the Lincoln Highway. Or it could be one of the resident area ghosts that's just passing through sometimes.
Right, and it's just so hard for me to in my mind, kind of qualify what a lot of these are.
Yeah.
Because traveling is very unique. It's not like it's a battlefield. Battlefield makes a lot of sense as to why there's so many like spirits, but like in a, in like highway,
Yeah.
that's far more interesting, I guess, and different.
And more variable for sure.
Right.
There is another ghost, or maybe the same one, I couldn't decide, but a different presentation. And this ghost is said to pace the second floor. Now, as I mentioned, we were there when it was quieter, but I think we still would have not noticed any footsteps.
Yeah, it would have had to been like completely empty. But then even if we heard footsteps, we know there's a second floor. We know it's a business operating.
Mm-hmm.
I would have immediately chopped it up to like they have some employee on the second floor. So it wouldn't even flag on my radar, I don't think.
I agree. And people seem to think that this is a different spirit, but I think it could be the same. The only thing that makes me think it isn't is that some reports say it sounds more like a child running than like an adult male footfall.
Could be the same, or it could be two.
That's true. Because it used to be an inn as well, it could be someone that was staying there as a guest, second floor.
Right. Well, that was going to be my question. Is like, did they house, where did people sleep?
I believe second floor. I believe the first floor was the like proper public house with the food and the drink, and then the second floor was the inn.
Gotcha.
So that would make sense. And a local paranormal group, the Ghost Detectives, did do an investigation here, and you can see the whole thing on YouTube. But one of the really notable things that they got was an EVP of a young girl saying the word daddy. Now, I previously thought that daddy was more modern rhetoric, but then we did the holiday haunts of Bethlehem, and back in like the 1800s, they were using the term daddy as well.
Right.
So I think that the EVP of daddy could be tied to the child footsteps running in the second floor.
It could be, but during that time period, didn't we discuss that like, daddy was more of a title, not so much like father?
Yeah, I think it was more like an auntie or something, but it could still be the case that this is a family friends establishment and you're very familiar with them, so you could use a term of endearment.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think that the footfalls on the second floor could be split into different hauntings. One potentially tied to the patron at the bar, one tied to the child ghost, also daddy tied to the child ghost.
Plot twist, we're assuming that the person at the bar was a full-grown adult. It was actually a child.
No, because the accounts say it's a man dressed in 1700s garb.
Okay, fine.
The previous owners actually had some claims of paranormal activity there back when it was the Ship Inn. They claimed that one day they were working in their office and they heard a huge commotion in the dining area. Surprised that was happening, they went to see why staff was moving tables, etc., and they realized that nothing was amiss and no staff were moving anything. So they chalked it up to paranormal.
Could be, or it could be a prank that somebody just played
How?
a video.
I don't know about that. They're just playing a video with sounds of tables moving.
Yeah.
I mean,
to play a practical joke.
That's oddly specific. I guess if you know that it's known to be haunted, you know that the owners think it's haunted, you could pull a prank like that. Theoretically.
Right.
I think it's more likely it's actually haunting than it's a prank.
Sure. I'm just always, trying to throw, instead of immediately fall and say like, oh, that's definitely paranormal, provide something.
The other one happened on a Super Bowl Sunday. And what happened is the owner was actually covering as bartender. And there was a few locals sitting at the bar. While the owner was bartending, suddenly one of the stools flew backwards 3 to 4 feet as if something had like forcefully pulled it back. And there were multiple people at the bar at this time, so many people can corroborate this story. And she said that she just stood there and looked at it and then eventually went and moved it back. But people think that it's a ghost trying to get a seat at the bar.
Was it? I have several scenarios that ran in my mind. Like the ghost was like, the spirit was, yanking that thing out. Or was watching the Eagles play. They weren't doing so hot and so outraged, kicked the stool back.
I can't wait for our Eagles friends to listen to this episode.
I mean,
people are very passionate about the Eagles near Philadelphia. So I see what you're saying. I'm thinking it's a ghost from the 1700s. You're saying it could be a more modern ghost.
It could be. Or, I don't know. That was more somewhat of a joking-esque. Because, like, if it is a 1700s ghost, how would it understand modern football? Because that wasn't around then. But then that always begets the question then, well, how does a 1700s ghost know how to interact with technology that's presented to it?
Well, it's not technology. It's just a stool. They had stools in the 1700s.
Well, right. But, like, when we discuss about other hauntings.
I see. Yeah. No, but I think you do raise a good point, even though I know you were joking when you started. Because we do always assume that the ghosts are so old, but it could be someone that just loved going to the Ship Inn. And maybe they're frustrated about the score of the game. See, what I thought it was is the spirit was like, okay, I'm going to move that. I'm going to move that. I'm going to move that. Builds up so much energy. And then it like goes flying,
Right. Or who knows? Who knows what it could have been.
Yeah.
But
I think definitely paranormal. How else do you explain that? Multiple people saw it.
This is where I just wish there was a video.
Yeah.
Like if you had a security camera watching your bar or something that was able to catch it.
Yeah, they didn't have any footage.
So that's the unfortunate part here. Going off what's been told, that's pretty hard to explain of when nobody's around it. It would be, and this is where I'm going to play devil's advocate to my own prank thing. It's a lot to set up that prank, that nobody sits in that seat so that you have like a string or something attached to it to fly it back.
What is up with you and thinking hauntings are pranks now?
No. I'm saying just like if I was to bring that up.
Okay.
As a plausibility or a plausible scenario, it's really not that plausible.
It's not plausible at all.
That'd be really hard to pull off.
Yeah, I agree. So it sounds like there's a few distinct spirits here. And I think we have the young girl, as we mentioned. I think we have the bar patron. And then I think we have at least one other person. And when we think of locations, like not storefronts, but places where you can go to be a customer, where you can be a patron, I think we often think about the ghosts as being the patrons, but I wonder if there's previous innkeepers or previous workers here, even.
There could be.
Maybe we're thinking, oh, it's a disgruntled Eagles fan moving the stool, but really it's a worker trying to stack the stools.
I see. Or just moving it back to like mop, clean.
Right. Or to where they think it should be. Maybe the bar was in a different location.
That's also a pretty good idea.
Yeah. So I think it could be a few things. The footsteps could even be an old worker walking along the second floor.
Right. And if it is a disgruntled Eagles fan, they're just getting upset before the end of the game because then the Birds win.
Go Birds.
There you go.
We're gonna upset some people.
It's the Philly area. If we were doing a football haunting in another city, I'd be like, go that team.
I mean, we live in Pittsburgh though.
Right.
Yeah. Black and yellow. No. So those are the hauntings of VK Brewing. What do you think? Do you think haunted, yes or no? And would you visit this place of paranormal phenomena?
Well, considering I've already visited it, I will visit again.
Yeah.
Or if the opportunity arises. I think it could be worth doing an investigation as well. I think it'd be pretty neat to do like an overnight. And then like, maybe hit the tap, have a beer or two. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen?
I think it would be super cool to do an overnight here. It's a really cool historical building, and they maintained a lot of the original character, which is cool. If they were open to overnights, I would think it would be really cool. But also, places with this much history, we always say, are so challenging because it can be hard to nail down what era the ghost is from. Is it someone from the 80s, or is it the 1970s, the 1700s patron that you're talking to, if you're engaging? So I think there's a lot of potential here. I would love to go back both from a patron at VK Brewing perspective and a Paranormal in Pennsylvania perspective. I just think it was a cool place in general, and I'd love to do an investigation.
Agreed.
And I don't think any of the spirits here are malicious enough to warrant me not wanting to go overnight.
No.
They're not malicious at all.
Right. Plot twist, we go there, and it's all malicious.
Yeah.
And we see Erica get dragged away. And we're just like, oh, well, there's that. Like,
it would be funny to test your theory on sports fans, though. Not on Erica.
Okay, I was like, are you for once agreeing with me that it's like, ooh, let's sacrifice Erica? I'm like, what is this nonsense?
No, I'm just glazing over that one.
Oh, okay.
But you could really test the theory of the sports fans and see if it was specific to the Super Bowl or not.
Yeah, I mean, that was a joke theory, but
I think it could be real though.
Yeah. I mean, it would be interesting. So like the relevant pieces of information to that are it was during game day.
Yeah.
And so like maybe who was playing.
I don't know.
Maybe play the same game when it occurred.
That's a really good idea.
I know, I'm so full of them.
You are. Other than the Erica dragged away part, you've been full of good ideas.
Well, that was a joke, and then I thought you were actually like, yeah, we should definitely test that. I'm like, no.
No, but I think that could be one way to engage the spirits. And also, again, using rhetoric that the ghosts themselves have used. Maybe saying, like, daddy in a sentence to try to engage that little girl.
Sure.
So I think tons of potential here. Would love to go back. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of Paranormal in Pennsylvania, where we discussed the history and hauntings of VK Brewing in Exton, PA. Tune in next Thursday to see what we discuss next, and stay spooky, my friends.